Okay, welcome again. We're going to hear from Maddie Allman on her paper on the topic of rural brain drain, the loss of workforce ready and educated young people from rural areas to more urban environments. And this is a challenge, especially to areas like Ohio's Appalachian region. Maddie is a two-time graduate from the Ohio State University and a proud Buckeye. She earned her Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture in 2022, majoring in community leadership, community and extension education with a dual minor in youth development and rural sociology. She also completed her Master of Science degree in August of this year with a degree in agriculture communication, education, and leadership with a specialization in community and extension education. After growing up in rural Vinton County, Ohio, Maddie traces her passions back to her Appalachian roots. She currently serves Ohio State Extension as the Jackson County 4-H Youth Development Extension Educator. And in that role, Maddie was actually eligible for a really tremendous program that's provided in our part of the state through the Foundation for Appalachian Ohio. It's the Growing Home Fellows program. It was a competitive program that people had to apply and to be accepted to. And Maddie was accepted for her work in Jackson County. And this is really all about the foundation seeing a need to develop new leaders. And this fellowship offers a $32,000 stipend. Obviously, that 32 iconic to our 32 county region in Appalachia. And it focuses on fellows between the ages of 18 and 35 who agree to live, work, and volunteer in the region. And Maddie's project, as we mentioned a moment ago, is bringing the Fill the Freezer campaign to Jackson County. This is a campaign that invites buyers at the county fair livestock sales to donate their purchases to fill the freezers at local food pantries. So it gives those youth and the folks who are buying the agricultural hogs that they're producing to fill that freezer for the local food pantries who really serve our seniors and children and poverty and families in poverty and at risk. So a tremendous project. In her spare time, Maddie also enjoys traveling, gardening, kayaking, watching the football games, obviously rooting for the Buckeyes. And she and her partner, Josh, will be getting married in just 23 days. That's so exciting. And they spend time with their dog Goose. So I'm pleased to turn over the program to Maddie to share with us more about her topic.
Thank you, Gwynn, for that lovely introduction. Yeah, 23 days away from the big day. So if I seem like I'm losing it, I am. But we're going to get there and it's going to be great. But thank you guys so much for joining today and being a part of this presentation. I am by no means an expert, so I appreciate, being given this opportunity to discuss this topic and my research and just what I'm passionate about. I love where I grew up. I grew up in Vinton County, as Gwynn said, and my favorite thing about living in Appalachia and rural America is the community and just the beautiful natural capital that we have in our area. And so as I kind of grew and went to Ohio State, and I met people from all over Ohio and all over the world, really. I learned, just how special our small towns and our rural communities are. And so that led me to kind of notice some things about where I grew up and about the culture and the community assets that are there. And that's really what drove me to do both my undergraduate and graduate research, which kind of surrounds these topics of, community capitals, social capital, cultural capital, natural capital, brain drain, education, and a lot of these things that are so ingrained within each other that make our communities what they are. And so I'm going to share with you my presentation today. This is literally my defense presentation. I hope you can see that all right. Good, Gwynn, thumbs up. But I just wanted to share with you guys what I have learned throughout this process, looking at emerging adults in the region and where they're going. What are they doing? Maybe if it'll let me kind of move on here. We even practiced this, didn't we, Gwen? All right. So she already gave you a really great introduction. So I'll probably just kind of skip over this slide, but let's talk about the Appalachian region of Ohio. So that 32 county region, right there, kind of highlighted in red. Again, I'm from Vinton County down in there, and I work in Jackson County, but I have just fallen in love with our entire 32 county region and everything that we have to offer. Our region is so rich in various capitals and different things. We have both kind of urban and rural in the region, and just some really great things going on. But also historically, we've noticed that our economic stratification, is there. We've got this, the history of resource extraction with all of the beautiful natural capital that we have. We have a really rich history in mining and timbering, and that brief economic boom has also kind of resulted in this economic stratification. And so you see that across the region in different communities. Also within education and healthcare, and also infrastructure. But there are a lot of really great grant programs and different programs, kind of like the Growing Home Fellowship, that have kind of worked to tackle some of these current issues that we see in our region. And so, a current issue that I saw that I wanted to focus my research on was a topic called brain drain. And so, I first learned about the concept of brain drain my freshman year of college, and it's a grand challenge. It's a really multifaceted concept that can't just be easily solved by a simple graduate research study or just one thing. It really is something that is impacted by a multitude of issues and things, people's perceptions and goals and ideas and values. But really, brain drain is defined as the loss of workforce ready and educated young people from rural areas to more urban communities. And that is based on a study by Carr and Kafalis, which was done in 2009. They wrote a really great book. Um, and so that study was done actually not in Appalachia, but it was done in, I want to say, Indiana. And so that study really focused on community based assets and a type of person. And so we'll talk about it in a little bit, but they categorized types of young people, high school graduates, into different categories as to where they were going, what they were doing, what they valued, and that sort of thing. So I kind of looked at that within my study. And so some of my questions were, what's happening? Is this even a thing? Is this something that Appalachia is experiencing? And what are those migration patterns? So where are they going if they are leaving our region? What are the priorities, those life course choices among those emerging adults? And then what are the recommendations to solve this problem or combat this issue that we're facing? So, a brief review of literature. I told you about the Carr and Kafalis study, but there's also this debate: is brain drain a thing? Is brain drain a problem? There are some arguments that a brain drain from one community is another community's migration gain. So, if I am a young person that is educated, I'm ready to join the workforce, and I leave my rural community to go to a more urban community, that community benefits from my ability to work, my contribution to their economy, my education, my skill set. And so is that really a problem? Is, some argument. Then you have this concept of rural return. So rural return is the concept that a person, is educated, workforce ready, they may leave and then they come back. And so how does that benefit or harm a community as well? So you kind of have these three concepts of brain drain, migration gain, and rural return that kind of combat each other as to what is really the issue. And so my argument within my study is that brain drain, this drain of education and, different ideas, different skills and abilities from a community harms the community because you lose those assets. And so kind of looking at how that interacts. You also have emerging adulthood, which is clarified by, that 18 to 25 part of the life course. And so it's kind of a new thing within, the last couple of decades. It used to be that you would graduate high school and you would go straight into the workforce. You would, settle down, get married immediately, sometimes not even before graduating high school. And now we have this new sort of generation of individuals that experience emerging adulthood, this 18 to 25, this period of time where they might go to college, they might travel, they might experience life through a little bit different of a lens. And so nowadays, there's a lot of choice in that time of emerging adulthood. And so, what does that look like? What are those life course choices that people choose? Do they choose to get married? Do they choose to explore the world? Do they choose to go to college? What are those choices and what influences those choices? We have a lot of theory based into this study, theories of community capitals. So there are 7 community capitals that kind of influence and build up a community. You've got the human capital theory that talks about education and what is human capital and what is gained from human capital. The push-pull theory of migration, which talks about capitals that are in communities that may push or pull away individuals to those communities. So, what do urban or rural communities have that the other doesn't? And are those enticing or maybe not so very pretty that people want to get away from? And so, it's kind of this balance of what is pushing people away or pulling them in. Place identity theory. So a few of you guys mentioned in your comments in the chat that you have a strong tie to place. And that's exactly what this is. And so a lot of people have a very strong tie to where they grew up, where their parents are from, have deep roots and connections into Appalachia. And so how does that interact and, interfere with maybe the brain drain? And then a structural ideology. So just looking back at the history and the culture and everything that has kind of led Appalachia and Ohio to the point where it is now. So the purpose was to describe the rural brain drain in Appalachian, Ohio, look at life course choices and the migration patterns of these 18 to 25-year-olds in the region, and then provide resources to regional leaders to help the region's emerging adults thrive. So specifically targeting this 18 to 25-year-old age range. And so these are my research questions. I had 5 because, if you know anything about me, I can't decide on anything. So I want to explore it all. And so I had 5 research questions that guided the study, looking at different aspects of my data. And so my methodology was a qualitative descriptive phenomenological study, say that 5 times fast. And basically what that is it describes the lived experiences of individuals regarding a specific phenomenon and what is that lived experience and what are the common themes and patterns of those individuals. And so I collected my data through surveying via Qualtrics, and I used Excel and IBM SPSS statistics to kind of analyze and put that data together. It took forever, and we finally come out with some similar patterns. And so I used inductive coding to derive patterns from the data, what I noticed from each individual's response. And so the sample were 383 18 to 25-year-olds that were born in the Appalachian region of Ohio. The survey was anonymous, and so basically they gave me the county that they were born in and then some of that migration pattern. So for example, if I were to respond to my survey, I was born in Vinton County, born and raised in Vinton County. I moved for a majority of my emerging adulthood to Columbus to work and go to college. And then, excuse me, at the end of my emerging adulthood, I moved back to Appalachian, Ohio, to Jackson County to live and work. So that sort of migration pattern was what I was looking for. Excuse me, I've got a cough in my throat. I'm gonna drink some water. Maybe if I can move my slide here. Okay, so sorry. So findings. So research question one, what are the migration patterns? So I learned that out of my study sample, about a third of participants had permanently outmigrated from the region, which is a pretty significant amount. And so then I started looking at, why, what were the reasons, and we'll kind of get into that here in a little bit. I looked at what are the return rates. About 15% or 58 individuals returned. So they left the region, gained some sort of education, some sort of experience, and then returned back to the region for various reasons as well. And then overall, across the nation, I learned that 28% of emerging adults permanently outmigrate from rural areas in the United States. So this is kind of a national phenomenon that's happening, that we're getting close to almost 30% now, of emerging adults leaving rural areas. And so what does that mean for rural communities and their vitality? So then I looked at specifically mapping out where, my study participants were going. And so this map down in the bottom left corner was kind of the original, where they began, where they were raised in the region, where they started. And then the Ohio map to the right is where they ended up in Ohio, if they stayed in Ohio. So you can kind of see the distribution of participants there. And then we also had several participants not just leave the Appalachian region of Ohio, but leave Ohio entirely. And so you can see a nationwide map there of where some of our participants of the study went. We also had several. It was really hard to map. I tried and I just couldn't, I didn't like the graphic. We had several move out of the United States as well, ending up in countries like Sweden, some Caribbean islands, different places in Europe as well. So it was a really cool, very spread out map of a lot of our study participants, which was very cool to see. But I'm a visual person. And so this was really cool for me to see this kind of mapped out as to where were they going and answering that question. So physically, this is where they were going. And then the second research question was, what is their motivation? What motivates them to stay, leave, or return to the region after gaining an education or early workforce? And so I'm going back to that base case study that I referenced earlier, the Carr and Kafala study, and those characterizations, those categories that they put their study participants in. And so that's what I did too. So you have your achievers, your stayers, your seekers, and your returners. And that is derived directly from that study. And so achievers are characterized by outmigrating for education, job opportunities, those diverse experience that will help them achieve a life goal, whether that's education, financial stability, whatever that is. Stayers are the folks who stay. And so they're characterized by strong community ties. They might prioritize their family, or their roots, and then that blue collar work is typically where you find your stayers. Seekers are folks that are characterized by exploring the world and the unknown. They are mostly involved with the military or other service organizations, maybe like the Peace Corps or something like that. And then your returners are those who leave and then return to the community. And they're kind of categorized in two ways, as boomerangs or high flyers, because they, might come back immediately from wherever they were going, whether that's college or some sort of opportunity, or they might come back more down the road, a slower pace. So a majority of our study participants were stayers. A lot of them stayed in the region. Maybe they didn't exclusively stay in their hometown or their immediate county. Maybe they moved in the region somewhere else, but a lot of them stayed within the region. The next category was our achievers. So a lot of them exited the region to find, education or job opportunities, some of those things. So next we have our third research question, which asked about the factors that shaped those migration decisions. So I kind of took the top 5. They were able to rank community assets, which were things like you see there, the proximity to family, affordability, job opportunities, etc. I want to say there was about 12 that they could rank, and this was the top 5. And so as you can see, they could click multiple and pick kind of what their top ones were. They could rank them. And so proximity to family was the top life course priority, the top reason that they stayed or left, indicating that migration decision. Affordability was the next one, looking at what is the economic status? Can they buy a house? Are things more affordable in the region for them? And they were able to also leave comments on some of these things. Third was job opportunities. Fourth was amenities, like things to do, shopping, movie theaters, just anything that, hiking trails, just things that they can do in their community to kind of keep them entertained. And then education was number 5. Research question number 4 was what ways do Appalachian emerging adults perceive the brain drain? So one of the questions was, do you see this impacting your community in any way? And so a majority of participants said yes. Some said no. And then there was this middle group of people that said maybe. And so, yes, responders heavily discussed levels of education in the region, really talking about workforce development, how their schools prepared them for graduation and those sorts of things. No responders highlighted really great local success stories and the region's positive attributes, speaking about their hometowns, small businesses, and their success. And then maybe responders saw both sides of the issue and how they might be connected to Appalachia's culture and history. And so they had a maybe I see this as a problem, but also we have these really great things going on. And then finally, research question number 5. And so what retention strategies are out there? What's currently happening maybe in Appalachian, Ohio, or in the state of Ohio, or in other Appalachian states that we could implement to serve as a possible solution for this outmigration. And so kind of a top 5 was building human capital to increase community capacity. So basically educating our workforce, providing, that leads into number 2, supporting education initiatives for job and academic skills to increase that success. Number 3 was focusing on specifically workforce development, career development, and managerial leadership opportunities. Several survey respondents indicated that there's no way for them to move up, move laterally in their positions, find more work or things like that. So if they wanted to move up in their career, they would have to maybe exit the region to find opportunity elsewhere. Fourth was to invest in infrastructure to promote economic development and business development to bring job opportunities to the region. I know that is very much easier said than done, but in general, more job opportunities means more opportunity for young people in our region, which is what they need. And then finally, supporting community development and the investment of new amenities. So young people want things to do. They want to be able to, have access to go to a shopping mall or have access to different things that they can do in the region, hiking trails and being able to see natural capital. And so the investment of new amenities, you hear, I feel like we all have heard people talk about, there's nothing to do in my rural small town. And so investing in that is what's going to retain your emerging adults as well. And so, looking at limitations, implications for the study, and then recommendations. Like I said earlier, I am not an expert, and research is never perfect. And so I would say, if I could give advice, if somebody was to kind of copy and paste the study and do it over again, revise the measure, the actual survey itself, just to make things a little more clear, and clarified for readers, as they took the survey itself. It was a little long, and so we did have several folks, maybe get halfway, or three-quarters of the way through the study, and they were over it. They stopped, and so I had to throw out those responses because they weren't the full, picture of their migration data or whatever it was that I needed. And so I had to kind of throw those ones out. I also think that, some of the findings were a little limited, just due to that and the inability to kind of really have that face-to-face connection. It is, just reading what they write on paper, and sometimes, what I might interpret somebody writing may be different than maybe the way that you interpret it. So it is very interpretive in that aspect. And so I would say further research questions for this study would be looking at how those life course priorities might change over time. And so if you're looking at an 18-year-old versus a 25-year-old, that's a pretty big gap, in the sense of what your life course priorities are. So if you would have told me at 18, you know, I would have, if you would have asked me these questions at 18, I would have told you that my priority was to move away and get out of there and go to college and, have fun in college. But now at 25, my priorities have changed. I'm getting married, I'm starting a family, I've settled down. And so what does that really look like when you break it down further into those age categories? And so then the next question is, what would the survey results look like, if surveying an expanded age? What if we increased that age group to maybe 30 or 35? How would the study results change in that sense as well? And then looking at the specifics. So what are the specific career and higher education opportunities that these individuals are looking for that are not available in our region? As many of you know, Appalachian, Ohio is home to some excellent institutions of higher education and vocational training. And so what are they looking for that's not available to them locally, that is kind of driving them from the region? What are those education opportunities, the job opportunities they are seeking that we can't offer? I think of a friend of mine specifically. They wanted to study marine biology. I don't know about you, but I don't think that's really an option for our region. Maybe a little bit of scuba diving in the Ohio River, but for the most part, maybe that's something that they would seek elsewhere. So just looking at those sorts of things. And then finally, just looking at Appalachia's bright spots. So as we were chatting a little bit ahead of this presentation, we were talking about, some of those, organizations and different things that, I know a lot of you guys that are probably on this call are doing within your own work, your own service organizations. And so, looking at the bright spots of our region and showcasing those and really, driving those to thrive. And so, plugging the brain drain, in my opinion, driving from what I learned through my study, starts with rural return, which is that concept of encouraging our young people to seek, opportunities, seek education, seek training and experiences outside of our region, and then encouraging them to come back to our region and spread that wealth. And so, learning about other community development initiatives that are happening, looking at our region's, state or seekers and achievers. Where are they going? What are they doing? What have they learned? And how can we bring them back to help us build a better, brighter region? And so I know I talked very fast. I could talk about this topic, for a very long time if you let me, but I know, this is a lunch and learn. So I wanted to give you time to eat your lunch. I know some people only have, 30 to an hour to do that. So I am happy to answer any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen and pull anything back up. But I really could discuss this for hours and hours if you let me. It was 2 years of my life that I put towards this study and analyzing this data and writing this paper. And so I'm happy to kind of fill in any gaps or answer any questions based on that short synopsis there. So thank you guys for letting me present today.